Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 4 of the Cheeseheads podcast. As you can see, it is just Mason and Chris today. MJ is out for a concussion, which we still don't know how he managed to do that to himself. But we have kind of a loaded episode today, as we'll be talking about the Packers' divisional foes, what they need to do before this free agency period, which is actually opened as we're recording this at 3:30 on Monday, March 15th. There's already been some key moves today, which we'll talk about at the end of the show. But first off, we want to kick off with some latest news this last week from Green Bay, because we were kind of in the news a lot, specifically yesterday, but we'll talk about some of the news that happened prior to this. So, Chris, I'll let you kind of handle this first part. We're going to talk about our restructures with Devin Funchess, Billy Turner, Adrian Amos, and Preston Smith. So what were your thoughts on all those?
Yeah, obviously, they had to rework some money to get under the salary cap with the pandemic, but then we get the big news that Aaron Jones is re-signed 4 years, $48 million, which kind of shocked me when the news came out because all week we kind of heard he's not coming back. He's not coming back. He's going to get top tier running back money. And then he obviously signs back with the Packers, which I'm thrilled about, unlike some other people on Packers Twitter. But
yeah. For us, I think we all kind of agreed on our original show, which was the State of the Packers, that we all thought that Preston Smith was going to get cut. Obviously, that didn't happen. I think it's a good move, but I also see why some people are upset. But for me, it's a good move. You're paying him $750,000 more than if he was not on the team. He's still playing. You still have both Smith brothers and now, again, Rashawn Gary. And so I think that's a good deal. The only one I'm kind of not liking is the Devin Funchess one, because he didn't play. I understand it's like nothing. The contract is worth nothing like now, but still, it's kind of. I thought it was going to be a cut like Preston Smith, obviously, but it's kind of to the point for me. It's you have so many of those guys on the roster, and so. Did you have something you want to say there?
Yeah, I don't mind the restructuring with Funchess just because like where they're at money-wise and obviously the receiver market being what it is. I think if they bring him back at that number next year and let him see what he can prove. Obviously, he's had successful years in the past before he battled injuries and obviously moved around the league a little bit. But I was of the opinion that I didn't think Preston Smith would be back either just at like the dollar amount he was at, but I got to give my hat to Brian Gutekunst and Russ Ball for reworking that deal and keeping Preston Smith. I think can be productive again next year, obviously with Joe Barry and a kind of a new defensive scheme. After we saw him with Pettin, kind of looked like a little bit of a weird fit at times.
Yeah,
dropping back into coverage is not really who he is as a player. He's more of a stand-up pass rusher, but I didn't hate the Funchess resigning, no.
All right. So, and then before the Aaron Jones signing, which we'll get into a little bit more in this next clip, but we also did not tender Tim Boyle. So Jordan Love is our backup for next year. For me, that was kind of you either tendered him or you just let him go, which was obvious. But now it's like you know that Jordan Love is making some sort of development because they are able to let Boyle walk.
Yeah, I think eventually with Timmy, the writing was on the wall a little bit after the Love pick.
Yeah.
I think this year they kind of envisioned Love being QB2 and kind of sit behind Rodgers. But with Boyle, like obviously a great Packer, but just kind of the odd man out in the quarterback room.
So obviously we had some big news yesterday, as you mentioned a little bit ago, about Aaron Jones returning to the Packers on a 4-year extension worth up to $48 million. And I'll be the first to say that upon seeing Aaron Jones' post saying running back or whatever he did post, my exact words were, "Are you fucking kidding me?" Because it's a running back. We drafted A.J. Dillon in the second round, obviously. It was, how much did we pay him? And so obviously you waited a couple more minutes, and then it was 4 years, $48 million. And again, wasn't really the happiest because that's top 5, top 7 running back money. But then you look further into the deals, which aren't fully out yet, and it's really a touch under $10 million per year with incentives that bring it up to $12 million. So I'm hoping that it's a 2-year contract with an easy out after year 2, which I don't know if you're looking up the details right now.
Yeah, with the deal, like I love it. First off, I think Jones is such a vital piece of the Green Bay offense, not only as a running back, but as a pass catcher out of the backfield, where there seems to be this common theme across the NFL. We can't pay running backs. We can't pay running backs. We can't pay running backs. But even with the Packers, it's like we have AJ Dillon. We don't need Aaron Jones, where you can have like a really good 1-2 punch next year where Dillon's that like power back where you can keep Jones healthy and keep his touches down, where it makes him even more effective with the ball in his hands, where I don't know, there just seems to be this huge theme where I don't get the we can't pay running backs.
I know my buddy Jack is a big person on the don't pay running backs trend. He actually wanted to be on the show today, but obviously he's a Patriots fan, so we can't really let him do that. We'll talk about his Patriots more later on. But for me, it was, yes, you took AJ Dillon in the second round. For me, it wasn't as much as he's gone. It was the fact that, are you wanting to pay Aaron Jones that money, or are you wanting to pay Corey Linsley that money? And for me, it was, we have AJ Dillon. We don't really have, we have a lot of interior like movement. We have a lot of bodies there, but we don't have a set in stone person that can play center next year, unless you want to move Jenkins right over. So for me, that was, I'd rather pay Linsley that money, which he might get on the open market. I'm not too sure, but that was it for me.
I think he'll get close to 10 on the open market. Yeah.
He hasn't signed anywhere as of yet at 3:36 Central Time, but he'll probably sign in the next 15 minutes, as far as I know, hopefully. But that's like my standpoint. For me, you'd still probably.
Linsley just signed. Chargers.
You're shitting me, right?
Expected to make him the NFL's highest paid center. So there you go.
Tom Telesco is such a God damn. I love Tom Telesco. I have a handwritten letter from him. Corey Linsley goes back and plays with Brian Balaga. That's a perfect spot. That is a perfect spot. It was either that or Miami for me. It is just perfect. I love that fit. But like we were talking about, I said he signed in the next 15 minutes and he signed 3 seconds later. So I want to see what it is, but I love it for Linsley. Go help out Herbert. Go get a left tackle. Go get guards for Chargers. Help Herbie out. But obviously,
I wanted to bring Corey back because he's such a vital piece of what the Packers do up front. But I think he's going to either way price himself out of Green Bay, depending on what the number.
I want to see what the deal is. So if it gets sent into our chat, I have it on the right side. I have you on the left. But I would have rather signed Linsley to that deal that we signed Aaron Jones, depending on what the deals are, which we'll probably find out in about 2 minutes, but still. I still want to take a running back late on day 3.
So?
I'd still like to target a Jermar Jefferson, Javian Hawkins. You're losing Jamal Williams. And I know you saw what I probably put in the chat a little bit ago of the compilation of him dancing. And I was like, oh, that's hits a little bit. But that's still, for me, you need to have 2 or 3 backs that just consistently can produce if someone goes down.
Yep.
Which Patrick Taylor, sure. Dexter Williams, But that's it for me anyway. Do you want to talk any more about the Aaron Jones signing?
I just think I'm really happy he's back because next year we roll into another chance to go get a Super Bowl with Jones, with Devontae, and we take our best shot at it. I think it's effectively going to be a 2-year deal I think it was 9.5 cap hit that can get up to 12 with player bonuses, but no, that's it for me.
So I want to talk about the next moves that I think we should make. Obviously, release Dean Lowry. That opens up a lot more cap space, which hasn't been done yet. Extend Zadarius Smith and Devontae Adams. And I kind of want to maybe scroll up in the chat from last night. I think you know what I'm talking about, but you were talking to Brady about what the hell are the Packers doing. And you were like, they have a young quarterback waiting in the wings. And I was like, wait, did Chris finally turn the corner on this?
Well, our good friend Brady was getting on the Packers for not having a real plan. But obviously, Jordan Love is the future. Whether we like it or not, the writing's kind of on the wall with Aaron Rodgers, where they haven't touched his deal yet. And I think effectively he's got 1 or 2 years left, and then Love is the future. But going back to the free agency moves, like we want to see them make, I think depth on the O-line, if we can dip into the O-line class a little bit and get an interior piece would be big, just because I think Elton Jenkins can be every down center in the NFL. He's still really young. He's still a really good player, but I would just want an added piece of depth to that room.
So obviously, I want to make a note here. We didn't really make a note of this in our Restructure Rodgers podcast, but for me, it's when the move is made, if you restructure Rodgers, that sends a message to both Rodgers and Jordan Love.
Yep.
It sends a message to Rodgers saying, this is it. This is your last year. After this, you're out. I'm gonna do you hear that in the background?
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell MJ to cut that out. Hey, you fuckers are loud as fuck. I'm trying to record a podcast here. Yeah, we're talking about Linsley right now. But I'll just I'll leave and then I'll tell you when to invite me again. All right, fucking Jack.
Just going back to
okay.
Corey quickly.
Wait, what?
It's a four-year deal. Nothing officially done yet, but they're expected to make him the highest paid center in football.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to start this right back up again. So I want to kind of go back to the point that we made of Rodgers. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
3, 2. So for me, there's a point in this whole Rodgers restructurement. It tells a sign if Rodgers is restructured that he's staying the signal caller. If he's not, he's gone after this year. And that signals to Love that if he isn't restructured, that Love is the guy the next year, after this next season, which we didn't really talk about. So that is, it could kind of bring some stuff up in the locker room, I think, maybe. I'm not too sure about that, though. It kind of signals to both, like, what their future are for the team a little bit, for me at least.
Yeah. And obviously with that, we've kind of seen it before with Rodgers and Favre, the exact same scenario, but I forgot what I was going to say. Oh.
All right. That's all we had to say about the whole entire Rodgers restructure. Obviously, you want to extend Za'Darius, you want to extend Adams, cut Dean Lowry if you can. Then 2 moves today that we've already seen. The Packers did not tender Raven Green, which opens the door up for Henry Black and Vernon Scott to get some more starting reps as a third safety, kind of a big nickel type guy. And then we did tender Josh Nijman as our kind of developmental tackle. Do you have anything you really want to say about either of those guys?
With Raven Green, I think injuries kind of pushed his way out of Green Bay. Just missed too much time. I think he's still a pretty good player, but I would expect safety depth to be addressed on day 3 of the draft.
I think we might bring him back on a lower deal, but the original tender is kind of a lot for a guy that has missed so much time in the last couple of years. So did you want to say anything else over the last week of things that have happened? We kind of covered it all before we head into our divisional roundup.
I think Adams will be done by late next week, an extension, which will obviously free up some cap space, but no, it's about it for me.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen with you here real quick, hopefully. Does that show up kind of bad or no?
No, you're good. Okay.
So we're going to run through our kind of divisional foes here as the Bears, Lions, and Vikings before our free agency type deal, looking at their depth chart, seeing what they need. So, of course, we're going to start with our biggest rivals, the Chicago Bears.
The Bears.
So I think we kind of already know where we're going to start here. There's kind of a big hole at that one position of need, kind of the most important position in the NFL. There was some news today that actually I saw that San Francisco could be interested in bringing in Trubisky as one of their quarterbacks.
Yeah, Washington too. It's
Washington
obviously
too. But the Bears kind of made a move last week when they franchise tagged Allen Robinson. He has made it known that he is not going to be playing in Chicago
not going to
next
play.
year.
No.
So it's probably going to either end ugly. It's going to be a tag and trade type deal. Either way, they need a receiver, in my opinion. Darnell Mooney is a perfect guy for their number 2. I am a big Darnell Mooney fan. I think they need a true number 1 guy, whether that be Rashad Bateman in the draft or whoever, if they really want to sign anyone, which they don't really have much cap space as it is right now. Obviously, there's a lot of rumors about the whole entire Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson trade, but I mean, cool, you're going to get a quarterback, but you're going to send your next 3 first-round picks and however much other draft capital to get a quarterback when you have still needs on the roster.
Yeah, the Bears are kind of in a weird spot where Trubisky's obviously probably going to be on his way out of Chicago, but they're in the late teens, 20 in the draft, where like all the quarterbacks could be gone, but they're going to look at guys like, Andy Dalton, Ryan Fitzpatrick, kind of those stopgap QBs, and obviously the receiver spot with the Allen Robinson news that he's not going to play under the franchise tag. I agree with you. I think Darnell Mooney is a really good player. Showed out well last year, especially in those games against the Packers. Javon Wims is also another name where I think he's got some talent.
I mean, if he keeps this to himself, that is.
The main takeaway on this Bears offense is just more playmakers would be the big takeaway for me.
I think they would also be wise to get some offensive linemen, especially their right side, their offensive line. Jermaine Ifedi is up on contract. Alex Bars is a solid developmental piece at guard. Bobby Massey, I think, got cut last week. So right guard, right tackle could potentially be a need. I think want to go to the defense here. There's actually some news here on the defensive line for Chicago. Roy Robertson Harris, as we'll get more to on later, is now no longer a member of the Chicago Bears. He just got signed today by the Jacksonville Jaguars. But I think they could also improve here. Look at all the red here because that is all free agents right here. You have Akeem Hicks, and then you have Bilal Nichols. Who else is on that third D-line spot for in-base packages? Who knows? For me, there's also a big need at strong safety. They've tried filling it ever since that one guy who might or may not be in a Green Bay uniform has left. But I think they really need a strong safety opposite of Eddie Jackson. So for me, it's really quarterback, and then you could go right side of the offensive line, receiver, defensive line, and strong safety for the Bears' needs, which they kind of screw up if they kind of trade for one of those quarterbacks by just shipping off all their draft capital.
Yeah, just quickly, even along the D-line, Akeem Hicks is getting
older. He's not the same player anymore.
Eddie Goldman's a nice piece, but obviously with Roy Robertson Harris on his way to Jacksonville, D-line has become a need for the Bears. And obviously, like you said, after Amos departed to the Packers, strong safety has been a need for the Bears for a couple of years. But this Bears defense is still really solid, still one of the better units in the league. I think it's just out of depth, obviously, at those 3 positions.
I'd also like to point out how much of an awful contract they gave out to Robert Quinn last year, because that was insane, the amount of money that they gave him, and you're kind of seeing it thrown around here in free agency today already. Anything else to say about Chicago before we move on to Detroit? All right, so last week we talked about on the draft, our 7th-round draft for the Packers, that Detroit was the most difficult team to select for, and there's kind of a reason why, because they're in a position where they're still trying to win, but they're kind of in a full-blown rebuild already here. If I could scroll down. Obviously, number 1, Kenny Galladay was not tagged, which fine. I think that was actually just Detroit's new front office just being like, okay, we understand we're not in a place there. We're going to win right now. So just go get the bag, go somewhere that you're going to win. They brought in Tyrell Williams, which I think is an okay move, kind of a veteran presence there when you only have Quintez Cephas on your roster. Mohamed Sanu's gone. Marvin Jones is gone. Danny Amendola is gone. Jamal Agnew is already signed today. So receiver is a big need as well. And then you go along the offensive line, unless you want to talk about something with the receivers there.
Yeah, obviously with Galladay likely to depart, receiver has become a big need for the Lions, like the Bears, where they just need playmakers around Goff, right? But with the offensive line, I think they need added depth to that position too, because you look at the left side and even on their right side, they have a couple nice pieces, but they obviously need to upgrade there.
They need to upgrade desperately on their right side of their offensive line. Right guard is a big need. Stenberg was a draft pick last year, but I don't think he really played. Right tackle was a revolving door between Vitae and Crosby. That needs to be fixed there somehow, any way possible, because that contract they gave Vitae last year was awful, giving a guy $10 million per year, and he couldn't even start at the spot you wanted him to. They're fine at tight end. They actually brought in Josh Hill, member from the Saints from Dan Campbell's time when he was a tight ends coach there.
A nice signing for their backup
Nice
tight
signing,
end spot.
kind of
Obviously,
yep.
behind Hawkinson, yeah.
Locker room guy. Obviously, Adrian Peterson's gone, so you've got your tandem of Kerryon Johnson, DeAndre Swift. You don't need a running back. Go over to the defensive side of the ball. Romeo Aquara was just re-signed this morning to a big, nice contract. I think it was 3 years, $39 million. So
yeah, happy for the player after a really good year in Detroit. Obviously, he gets paid, and I think he's a really nice piece for that Lions.
I think they could upgrade on the interior of their defensive line because Nicholas Williams and then Danny Shelton hasn't really performed since he's came over from New England. Obviously,
no, he hasn't.
That was a mistake by Patricia, which you could say there was a lot of during his time there. A little bit ago, maybe an hour ago, I think it was, they brought back Jalen Reeves-Maybin on a 1-year contract, kind of a nice prove-it deal, kind of stay around. Jared Davis is now gone. He's now a member of the New York Jets. Linebacker is still a need because they lost the guy until yeah. And then I think maybe the biggest need on the roster, even more than a receiver, is the cornerback room, because you can see Trufant is there. I think I'm surprised he actually wasn't cut. I thought he was going to get cut. But you have Okuda, you have Oruwari, if you really want to start him at the other boundary spot. They cut Justin Coleman, so they need a new slot guy, but there's still not a lot of depth behind Okuda, Oruwari, and Trufant. They could also use another safety, as Harmon is a free agent as well.
Yeah, I think we saw with that Lions secondary last year where they couldn't bring blitzes a lot because they didn't believe in their secondary to hold up. Obviously, Okuda struggled at times, but with Trufant obviously being what he is at the age he is, secondary will obviously be a big need for them.
I think that Detroit is in such a weird position that I think they might just blow it all up, which they've kind of already done.
Yeah, they're in a really weird spot.
They've kind of already done it. I think they could probably somehow trade Trey Flowers if they really wanted to, gather up some draft capital. They got more draft capital in next year's draft and the year after from the Rams. So they're kind of they're already kind of starting. So I think Detroit it's going to take them a while, but we talked about on our the Rodgers Restructure podcast that the Packers are in a great position because all these teams in the division, they're all kind of trending downwards. Yep. Chicago, you have really no idea what's going on with their quarterback position. They kind of have a good roster, but there's a lot of guys that are gone now. Their defensive line's kind of depleted. Their receiving core is depleted. Their offensive line the right side of their offensive line is depleted as well. But now we get to Minnesota, and the one thing that sticks out to me right away is the offensive line, as usual.
The offensive line right away.
Minnesota has not been able to fix this offensive line for years. Pat Elflein, who used to be here, signed a new contract today as well. Again, Rashad Hill, Dakota Dozier, free agents. Brett Jones is a free agent. A little known about Brett Jones, I think you saw this earlier today as well. The Packers have shown some interest in bringing in Brett Jones as to compete for the center spot, which, fine, I guess.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I think it's obviously a veteran piece for a young interior of the offensive line, with Elton Jenkins obviously being probably the odds-on favorite to take over at center. But this offensive line has been kind of just a puzzle piece for years for the Vikings. They can never seem to get it right. Obviously, I think Bradbury and Cleveland are nice pieces, but the left side of the line with Hill and Dozier really, really would scare me if I'm a Vikings fan.
And then you move over, you have Gary Bradbury. That's probably almost the only safe spot you really have right now Ezra Cleveland, well, Brian O'Neill's pretty good at right tackle. Ezra Cleveland might move over to left tackle next year, which Drew Samita could probably slide right in at right guard, but you're still leaving opening at left guard, which left guard, left tackle, wherever you want to play Ezra Cleveland, that's fine. They released Kyle Rudolph, right?
They released Kyle Rudolph.
Okay, yes. So that opens a big door for Irv Smith to finally fully get his role as the starting tight end. And
big fan of the player.
Yeah,
I think he can be really good.
They have Dalvin Cook, obviously. The running backs are fine. You could maybe kind of start to look for your replacement for Kirk Cousins if a quarterback starts to fall down in the draft. Maybe a Trey Lance if he really starts to fall, kind of block him out from New England. I'm not really sure. It's so much of an unknown right now with these teams in the NFC North besides Green Bay with what they're doing at their quarterback spot, because Detroit might draft a quarterback for all we know. It's so weird because yes, there's so much like talk about Green Bay with the Rodgers and Love thing, but there's not really enough talk about what is going on with the other quarterbacks in the division because no one knows who's going to be starting for Minnesota in 2022, Detroit, Chicago. So we might have 4 new starters by the time in 2022 in the division.
Just quickly, another name here that kind of jumps out at me, obviously being with his age and his cap, and it's Adam Thielen.
Yeah.
Obviously we saw what Justin Jefferson was for the Vikings last year. And if he's ready to take that next step forward, could Adam Thielen be a cap casualty or a potential trade piece in the future? Because obviously with that $13 million cap hit, the Vikings kind of being where they're at, Thielen could be on his way out.
And then we move to the defensive side of the ball. Their whole entire front 4 could actually use kind of a uplifting. I do like Odenigbo. I think he signed kind of a prove-it, kind of cheap deal. I think he did do pretty well, if I am correct. They brought back Stephen Weatherly from Carolina. Jaleel Johnson's they used a lot of day 3 picks last year on the defensive line, which I do like doing. But there was some big news today that came out a couple hours ago that Danielle Hunter has not had to do with his contract situation at all. I think he can maybe get traded. Could he get extended because their cap is kind of up against the wall right now because of this year? It's like, again, all these teams are in such a wild position compared to the Packers. Yeah, we're having some struggles with the cap, but we're a top team, and these teams are kind of just trying to stay afloat at this point.
I think it's more than likely that Hunter's playing elsewhere. I just think with him in Minnesota being where they're at, he's going to find a new place to play.
I do. Obviously, I like to talk about the linebacker position a lot. Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks, great linebacker duo for Minnesota.
One of the best in the league. Yep.
Corner could still potentially be a need for them. I do like Jeff Gladney. Gladney was good. I think towards the end of the year, he was kind of a liability in the first half of his rookie year. Cameron Dancer is probably the better of the two, but there's still a need. Obviously, you're going to have a big hole here at free safety with Anthony Harris going to free agency. I don't think he's signed anywhere yet, obviously. And that might be – you can take that in the second round. There's really no one here that you would really trust, I guess. Maybe Josh Metellus, but you aren't bringing back George Iloka. He played 3 snaps. Anthony Harris is good, but how much is he going to get on the open market? Is he really going to want to stay in Minnesota right now? Because I think that if Minnesota doesn't make the playoffs this year, they're going to be under a new head coach for 2022 and then maybe a new quarterback, and everything gets thrown around and everything's just shifted.
Yeah, I think obviously with this Vikings secondary, they have some nice young pieces, like you said, but even they're in a really weird spot with Harrison Smith being up there in age where they're going to have to address safety sooner rather than later. But obviously with Dantzler and Gladney, we saw them struggle early on last year, but they did show well down the stretch. Even Mike Hughes is kind of a nice depth player for them, but secondary is a need, yeah.
All right, so is there anything else you want to say really here about our divisional foes before we get into our kind of big thing that has happened on to the day? Oh my, I just saw the contract detail on Linsley.
Yeah.
5 years, $62.5 million. That is a lot of money.
$26 million over the first first 2 years.
What did you just say?
26 million over the first 2 years.
Oh, yeah. That is a lot of money for Corey Linsley. It's well deserved. I love that move for the Chargers, bringing back another Packer player to play alongside Brian Bulaga. That is a perfect fit. So obviously there's been some pretty big re-signings today. Buccaneers re-signed Shaq Barrett this morning. That kind of was wild. Somehow they were able to keep Chris Godwin and Shaq Barrett. I guess the cap is just a lie because somehow the Saints are staying afloat. But
yeah,
is
teams are kind of.
Is there a move so far today that you would just pinpoint as your favorite so far?
Oof. I love the Joe Thuney signing by the Chiefs. I think
he might play one of their tackle spots.
He's a premier offensive lineman in the game, and obviously, for anyone who watched the Super Bowl, we saw Patrick Mahomes running for his life. And with obviously Fisher and Schwartz being released, it's a need for the Chiefs. So I think that's a great signing. And I don't love the Johnny Smith deal by New England. I think they overpaid for him a little bit, but obviously with them having the money that they have, they can overpay for guys on day one. And the last one for me would probably have to be that Shaq Barrett deal. I thought he was going to get paid somewhere, but you got to hand it to Tampa, man. Everyone said they're not going to be able to bring these guys back, and they reworked the cap and got those deals done.
So I'm going to share my screen with you here, and we're going to go over some of these moves. We're bringing up NFL Update. Greg follows, obviously. They tweet out a bunch of the news after Shepty, Rappaport all retweet it. But obviously here you got Steelers re-signing Cam Sutton. That's just solid depth piece move there. Shelby Harris.
I would have liked, just quickly on Sutton, I would have liked him in Green Bay. I think he's a good player.
Yeah, it's a solid move. I do like the Broncos re-signing Shelby Harris. They need a lot of their interior defensive linemen were just free agents, so I like that move a lot. Obviously, the Corey Linsley signing is big for us as Packer fans. Really just congratulate him on.
Yeah, happy for Corey.
That is over. That's about. That's 5 years, 62. That's about. Is that 12? No, that's a little over 11 and a half, if I'm right. But that's a good deal for him. I love that fit in Los Angeles, just protecting a great second-year quarterback. Oh, yeah, we missed a lot here because of the podcast today.
I was going to say Samson Eckelbaum with closing out the 49ers.
I like that fit a lot. They have a lot of linebacker depth now there. Dietrich Weiss back to New England. I do want to talk about New England a lot here, but New England has just shaken up everything today. First off, Jonnu Smith about half an hour into free agency, and then Godchow was a decent signing. He could replace both Adam Butler and Lawrence Guy, or just one at a time. Matt Judon was a steal at his price, just at about $14 million per year. And then Jalen Mills, I wasn't so sure about because that's a lot of money for a guy that got just torched a lot during his time in Philadelphia. But he's a versatile piece. He can play all 5 positions in the secondary. So I think Belichick's going to love that fit. Is there anything you really want to say about New England right now?
Spending money. I love the Judon signing. I think he's one of the premier edge guys in the league. And like you said on Mills, I like that signing a lot just based on his versatility. And if there's anyone who's going to get the most out of any of these players in the secondary, it's Bill Belichick. So I think Mills, safety corner, and with 4 for 24, I think they got him at, which I like to do.
And then right before the podcast started, we saw the John Johnson deal to Cleveland. I love that contract. It's a steal. It's actually a little more expensive than what we gave Amos a few years ago. But Johnson paired with Grant Delpit and Ronnie Harrison in the back end of Cleveland. I know they need linebackers, but that secondary, if you get a slot corner now, then that's just that.
Brown's secondary is.
I really like what Andrew Berry has done. Andrew Berry, I used to be a John Dorsey guy, still am, but Berry has just turned this team around. He's got the right coach. Cleveland's no longer the Cleveland of old.
No, they're going to be right in the thick of the AFC playoff race next year. We know what they are along the defensive line. Obviously, they had a player of John Johnson's caliber where that secondary is becoming really good, really quick.
And then we have some news about CJ Mosley today. The Jets have been getting some trade calls on him. I know you tagged me in our chat about CJ Mosley. I'm going to see a note of that. Thanks for that.
I think we kicked the tires on them.
I mean, if they take a lot of the cap hit,
that would obviously have to be depending on what the number comes in at. Yeah.
If they give us a second return, hell yeah. But Thuney to Kansas City, that makes him the highest paid interior offensive lineman in the history of the NFL, if I am right.
Deal of the day for me. I love that deal for the Chiefs.
That's the biggest. Him and Linsley are the biggest moves so far. There has been no Kenny Golladay signing yet, no Will Fuller, which I know you want us to sign Will Fuller. I'm going to say no to that one as well. Obviously, happening at about 4 Central Time on Monday. So some of these players will be taken in the next few hours before Tuesday when this will be uploaded. I know you're not real happy with what I just said about Will Fuller.
Fuller, I think, would be the go-to guy for me at receiver, but even if they could I'm coming around on Juju Smith-Schuster. I think adding him with the number 2 spot opposite Adams would be great for the Packers too. But I know you're not on the Will Fuller train, but I can just picture him catching deep balls from Rodgers next year, and I love it.
I would rather have Juju than Fuller, but
agreed. I think
for some reason the Packers haven't signed Hollywood Higgins yet, and that's really making me unhappy.
I think they're waiting on the receiver market.
Yeah. Everyone's waiting on the receiver market
because big names have really set the price for the others. Yeah,
I think we can both agree on this one, but this move right here from Jacksonville to sign a returner receiver hybrid for a 3-year big contract.
Urban Meyer is loving his special teams unit a little too much. 3 years, $21 million for just a return man who offers you little to nothing as an outside wide receiver. It's yikes for me.
And then I will applaud Jacksonville for their signing on Roy Robertson Harris. Good player,
really good player.
Run stuffer in the middle of their defensive line. I think that was. Then Jacksonville also made another move by signing Rudy Ford as a safety and then return man as well. Which, why sign 2 return guys, I guess. But I think one of the most under the radar moves today so far has been the 49ers re-signing Jason Buret. He has been very injury prone over the last few years. He finally put it back all together, had a healthy season, but he only signed a 1-year contract when he could have had more on the open market.
Yeah, a player who's battled some really, really, really tough injuries over the last couple of years. A really talented piece in the secondary, but that 1-year deal kind of tells me that he loves his spot in San Francisco and wants to stay around 1 more year. And obviously, if he can be healthy, get paid next year when the cap goes back up.
And then we're going to talk about Houston here because I guess they're just trying to find anyone that will help make their team more likable and try to find some sort of culture here. They signed Mark Ingram a couple weeks ago. They signed Christian Kirksey this last weekend. And then today they've signed Andre Roberts and Grugier Hill, which it's just how much of it is just guys that are going to start versus guys who you're trying to make a guess at a good locker room at this point.
Yeah, I think it was 2 years, $5.9 million for Roberts, which was for just a guy like Agnew, who's just a return guy, doesn't really offer you much as a receiver. I think it's a little too much money for my liking.
Yeah, that's wow. But here's all the tweets earlier from New England when they were on their spending spree. That's actually a good deal for the defensive tackle for Miami. And then what they paid Jonnu Smith is kind of coming into question a lot on their 4-year, $50 million deal, making him the 3rd highest paid tight end in the league right now. I'm expecting Hunter Henry to get more wherever he goes. I'm going to take a swing here and say Jacksonville, but I have no idea because this free agency market is going to be insane. It already has been. But there's still a lot left to go. Do you have any thoughts on that contract for Jonnu Smith?
I thought it was a little too much. Jonnu, really just a red zone threat. He's improved a lot as a receiver, but I think as the number 1 guy in New England and their go-to piece on offense, he could have a big year, but handing out $31 million fully guaranteed on a 4-year, $50 million deal.
Yeah. And then Carolina today, their offensive line has needed some work for a while. They signed Cam Irving and Pat Elflein. It's fine. I would rather them spend more money, kind of like on the defensive side of the ball. They spent a lot of work there. They need another corner. They need
a lot of pieces.
I mean, they're in the right direction defensively. I'd like them to get another corner, maybe another safety, a linebacker specifically. But patching up the offensive line with these veterans has been a move that Buffalo and the Jets have made in the last few years. It worked for Buffalo. It has not so far for the Jets. But it's fine, but I'd like to see them. Of course, they tagged Taylor Moton, so they have that going for them. But I think that Carolina is in a position to where they're going to make a splash here pretty soon, whether it be for a Watson Wilson, if you really want to go that route, or if they're going to trade up for one of the quarterbacks in the draft. I think it has to be one of those. We go down here further. You see the Jack Barrett and Romeo Okwara deals. Marcus Golden was under the radar one earlier this morning, but I want to go down here. So maybe the biggest one from this morning, if I can find it. You see there that actually this is pretty important too. Corey Davis and then Johnny Smith before he was signed by New England, both not backed by Tennessee. I don't know if you saw this, but there was a page on the internet for like betting. They said Packers were the favorite to sign Corey Davis.
Wow. I guess obviously with the LaFleur connection, but I think he's going to price himself out of Green Bay. Someone's going to outbid the Packers with where they're at with the cap. But I love him in Green Bay, obviously. But
Corey Davis or Juju, who would you want?
Wow, that's tough. I think I'd have to go Juju.
I'll go Rashard Higgins.
I know you love Higgins,
but this morning there was it was an under the radar signing. It happened at like 2 a.m. The Ravens signed Kevin Zeiler to a 3-year deal worth $22 million. So Baltimore is patching up the interior of their offensive line, something they needed to do. They still need to figure out what's going on with the whole entire Orlando Brown situation. There's been some rumors there today about Jacksonville trading DJ Chark for him, which has been shut down by Sean John's son. But I think today has been pretty decent so far. We're only at 4:12 p.m., so there's obviously going to be some more moves down here tonight. But is there anything you want to say before we kind of just cap this off?
With the Ravens, go get a receiver. Go get Lamar, big number 1 wideout, and you'll be so much better next year.
All right. So thank you guys for tuning in today for our divisional roundup, some little Packers tidbits from earlier, and then our free agency recap. So we don't know what's happening next week. Hopefully MJ will be back with us, but we'll see you guys next week. See ya.